It's only a jump across the water from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, but in some ways it's like travelling back in time. After more than 20 years of relative peace, tensions have broken out again. Violence not seen for decades is back on the streets. Northern Ireland should be celebrating its centenary as part of the United Kingdom, but people are angry. They were promised that Brexit wouldn't hurt them.
We will protect our precious union between Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
But when the Republic of Ireland stayed part of Europe, a customs border had to be put in place. Unexpectedly, that's included Northern Ireland, and it's infuriated the locals who are loyal to Britain.
I'm in the middle of the Irish Sea, and I've just crossed a new sea border that splits Northern Ireland from the rest of the country. It's come about because of Brexit, and it's this border that could plunge Northern Ireland back into violent conflict.
The new border came with a shock. Customs checks are causing havoc with delays and soaring costs. The truckies are fed up.
The paperwork trail is very hard. On several occasions, just because of a paperwork glitch, we're having to wait hours.
It's a choke on the economy.
I have actually no idea how they fix this.
But it's not just hurting people's pockets, it's wounded their pride. And there are more protests expected against what's being called the British betrayal.
But the biggest trouble is in Belfast, and that's what we're going to really go and discover, how the people in Belfast are feeling right now.
I've arrived while this old industrial city is in COVID shutdown, and today it's eerily quiet. But I'm heading to the northern suburbs where there's a parade. It's marching season for the Protestants of Northern Ireland. The Clockfern Young Conquerors are celebrating their British identity. They've descended from British colonisation 4 centuries ago. I arranged to meet Brian Kerr, a community worker here.
The band and the marching fraternity is a major part in Northern Ireland, part of our cultural identity. It creates a sense of belonging. The bands themselves provide a structure for an awful lot of young fellas coming through. It keeps a lot of the young ones off the street. It's keeping them away from drugs, keeping them away from drink.
This sprawling working-class area called Rathcool is one of the biggest public housing estates in the United Kingdom.
It's an area of social deprivation. We have an awful lot of suicides and mental health issues in it. So the community is working hard to try addressing that.
It's suffered murder and mayhem over the decades. In April, violence erupted again here when the sea border left these loyal subjects feeling they were losing their identity.
The Union flag obviously is a national flag of our country, and it's a very fundamental point of our identity here in Northern Ireland, you know, because you have to remember that the Unionist community in Northern Ireland has been perpetually under siege almost from the formation of the state 100 years ago.
Ever since the English drew a land border to form Northern Ireland, Catholics in the north have fought against it, wanting a united Ireland. Protestants have defended it, proud of being a province of the United Kingdom. Jamie Bryson is a staunch loyalist and campaigns to keep the union strong.
And I think all the people standing here tonight can send a very clear message. We are not giving our country up.
In late 2012, there were mass protests against a decision to only fly the union flag a few days a year on Belfast's City Hall.
Nowhere else in the world would you be denied the right to fly your national flag from your prime civic building. It's almost as if we have to be ashamed of being British citizens, ashamed of our heritage and ashamed of our identity. And people in my community have simply had enough of that.
It's a battle they lost. Now, the imposition of a barrier between here and the rest of the United Kingdom has left them feeling cut adrift.
The seeds of that have been sown over 2 decades with things such as the Union flag being torn down, and that has all boiled together into, I suppose, what you could call somewhat of a perfect storm now.
How far are you willing to go to defend that flag?
Well, I mean, traditionally the Unionist and Loyalist community would go to any length to defend their country.
A century's worth of fighting over the country is memorialised on the walls of the cities. Illegal paramilitaries like the Protestant Ulster Volunteer Force, or UVF, and the Catholic Irish Republican Army, or IRA, plunged the country into a vicious guerrilla war. What's known as the Troubles began in the late 1960s. The Catholic Falls area of Belfast was a hotspot.
The buildings that you can see blazing have been set on fire by Catholics who are trying to roast out the Protestant snipers who've been shooting from the rooftops during the day.
We can consider ourselves freedom fighters, taking on British rule and trying to end partition in Ireland.
Paul Butler joined the IRA when he was a teenager.
What you're conscious of, you're in a state that while you're from here and you're Irish, but you didn't belong, you're kind of an outsider and you're discriminated against.
In 1972, an unapproved civil rights march was fired on by British soldiers.
Shooting had died away in a matter of minutes, but by that time, 13 civilians had been killed.
13 Catholics were killed in what's known as Bloody Sunday. IRA membership surged. Paul Butler was sent to jail for 15 years for shooting a policeman when he was just 17.
I was accused of murdering an RUC constable back in the day, of killing them. And that's what I was sentenced to, and membership of the IRA.
Barriers called peace walls were erected to keep the two warring tribes apart. But that didn't stop an explosion of political terror.
The provisional wing of the IRA announced that it had been responsible.
And tonight, the authorities have little doubt that most, though not all, of today's violence was organised by the illegal Protestant Ulster Volunteer Force.
We were involved in the conflict, so people were maimed, people were killed, and all sorts of things. It wasn't a nice place to be, but that's what happened.
Billy Hutchinson was a member of the UVF. At 18, he was involved in shooting 2 Catholic workmen. He was jailed for 16 years.
People had to take the law in their own hands. Not everybody did it, but some of us did. I've no regrets for anything that I did, but what I do have regrets for is every life that was taken during the Troubles.
3,500 people died during the Troubles.
Kieran Doherty was a hunger striker.
One of the most hallowed plots in the IRA section of the Milltown Cemetery belongs to IRA man Bobby Sands. His death 40 years ago changed the course of the conflict. Sands became an iconic figure after he went on a hunger strike while in jail. He stood for election to the UK Parliament.
30,000. Yeah.
Astonishing many, he won the seat with 30,000 votes. He died a month later from starvation. His legacy was in convincing Republicans that politics was more effective than violence.
But the whole thing that awakened in us something that the way forward is through electoral politics, if you like.
Paul Butler emerged from jail to become a politician in the Republican Sinn Féin party.
It was a step change in what the Republican movement then, and he paved the way for where Sinn Féin is now, in the largest party in Ireland, in both jurisdictions.
Billy Hutchinson also took the political path and now leads the Progressive Unionist Party.
My present role as a politician, and I will be making sure, to the best of my ability, that people don't go back to violence.
Billy Hutchinson helped negotiate the peace settlement signed on Good Friday in 1998.
Today, I hope that the burden of history can at long last start to be lifted from our shoulders.
A new optimism swept the country. New businesses sprang up. Black cab tours started 10 years ago.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
All good. Well, welcome to Belfast.
Danny Kearney shows tourists the old trouble spots of Belfast.
You meet a lot of different people. Belfast it's came a long way for the better, but unfortunately this year we've had a few problems. Hopefully it's just a blip.
Once upon a time, tourists would never have come here.
It's one of the most friendliest cities in the world, but that's our problem. We're friendly to everybody else except ourselves here, you know, so.
You worried about what you've seen in the last...
Of course I am, of course, because when you grew up in the Troubles here, young people don't understand. I'll give you an example. I seen my first kill when I was 7 years of age. Now, if you want your children or grandchildren or whatever to go through something like that there's something wrong with your head. But again, with dinosaurs here, there's some people just don't want to move on, and that's part of the problem. It's not about religion now, it's about identity. One side want to be British, one side want to be Irish. And that's part of our problem, especially in, what would you say, the hardline communities. This is what you call the international wall. It covers different parts of the world. Nelson Mandela. It covers their own Irish history, the likes of hunger strikers. You can see Castro on the wall, embrace change together, black and white should live in peace. Turkish freedom fighters.
It's surprising that what started as tin sheets across the road in the Troubles has ended with around 80 peace walls separating hardline communities across Belfast.
It's big.
Big wall?
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they do the tours, they say to me, well, obviously it's just for tourists. And I say to them, look, it's not for tourists. 23 years into the peace process, these walls are still needed, believe it or not.
It's almost unbelievable, isn't it?
You can Google this and some people tell you the wall's coming down 2023, 2024. I don't think this wall will come down in my lifetime, which I think is very sad.
At Bombay Street, which was a scene of devastation in the Troubles, the rebuilt houses sit under protective cages. The Catholic Falls district sits jammed up against the wall, with the Loyalist Shankill area a stone's throw away. I've arranged to meet a community worker at his home on the Shankill side. I wanted to find out how much has changed here since the peace.
Hi, James. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good, good. Do you mind if I
James Scott and his family bought here because it was affordable, but it's come at a cost.
Obviously, there was hope when we seen in the 90s when we seen the Good Friday Agreement. But what we've witnessed over the past probably 5 to 10 years, especially, is a more divisive, dividing political community, and it's about celebrating battles, it's celebrating death, celebrating conflict and rebellion. As you can see just behind us, we have a peace line, that barrier between two communities.
The government plans to dismantle the peace walls to encourage integration, but residents fear the communities aren't ready.
They were repairing it there a few years ago, and they took down the top part of it just to repair it. It was only down for about 4 to 6 weeks. And this area came from something that was quite peaceful to, we were getting cars attacked, petrol bombs. It was just like, all of a sudden, it just erupted. But it showed us a wee bit of a glimpse of what potentially would happen if the barrier was removed, which is quite sad. Didn't you get like Batman and...
Well, there is a superhero Lucky Blocks one.
Right.
James wants 7-year-old Jacob and his other children to feel secure, with a good future ahead of them. But the area is mired in problems.
It's quite decayed, and there's not a lot of investment in the area. So there's a lot of mental health issues, there's a lot of addiction issues, and with that obviously comes issues.
Just along the wall at a hotspot called Lanark Way, the protests in April against the sea border soon evolved into battles between hardline Catholics and Protestants.
I had to move my kids away from the area out to their grandparents, and this whole area was completely filled with police in riot gear.
In this era of peace, it's the Protestants who feel defensive and vulnerable. Few on either side in these working-class areas trust the police.
There's a massive issue against the police in the area. People are losing confidence in both communities with how the policing is being done.
Belfast is one of the most dangerous places in the world to police.
It's armoured. We also have perspex glass on the outside, very much for our petrol bombing and masonry which comes off it. The front has a grill which comes up.
Yep.
As you can see, so.
In the heavily fortified police compound in North Belfast, Chief Inspector Darren Fox showed me over one of their Land Rovers.
Really robust material. You'll feel the weight in the doors.
That's pretty thick, isn't it?
Yeah.
The heavy door, that's for sure.
Paramilitaries of both sides have re-emerged, and ordinary policing is done against the backdrop of a severe threat.
Right.
Hi, Nick.
How are you?
Sergeant Nick Williams was on duty the night of the Lanark Gates riots.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was about 3 weeks ago now. Yeah, so that's where there was 2 cars hijacked.
Yes.
And put on fire and smashed into the gates.
The gates segregate the communities and are locked by police every night, but rioters nearly pried them apart.
They couldn't quite get at each other, which is honestly good.
Yes.
But they were able to taunt each other, and in the end, there's a lot of police officers injured in the disorder to get it then sorted. It ended up that we had to bring police in to push back that direction and that direction at the same time.
Incredibly violent, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Probably in this area, it's the worst disorder probably for about 15 years.
The police are trying to build community trust.
The young people love talking about the police kit, bicycles, they love it. We try to do engagement stuff. We'll have like a football tournament planned that we're organising with some of the local primary schools we're going to hold here.
Yeah.
So to get the kids involved. If they feel that they own the park, they're not going to wreck it.
But the police service of Northern Ireland faces entrenched problems.
There's potential attacks from paramilitary organisations. It's a controlled area.
Paramilitaries on both sides are allegedly involved with drugs and crime and draw in disaffected teenagers.
There's a refusal to see and to learn from the mistakes of the past. You know, we still have active IRA and they're still bombing and they're still attacking. How is that moving forward and how is that a new Ireland?
Their Good Friday Agreement was supposed to reconcile the warring sides, but it's been fractious. At one stage, the government collapsed when leaders couldn't get along. I'm heading an hour and a half west to Londonderry, where 2 years ago, the peace process suffered its biggest shock. It happened at the Craigan Estate on Derry's outskirts. It's a heavily Irish Republican neighbourhood. The new IRA has a foothold here. It formed in 2012 and has not accepted Northern Ireland or the peace. In April 2019, police launched raids looking for weapons and explosives. As police moved in, a protest was hastily organised.
As an emboldened, hooded teenager takes aim, first with stones, and then part of a tree trunk.
This thing was going on for, I think, 3 hours before I got there.
It was a night of random gunfire and petrol bombs. News photographer Niall Carson arrived and set to work.
I went up and took these pictures of these guys throwing petrol bombs at the police jeeps.
Also at the riot that night was a young star reporter named Lira Mckee.
So where was she?
She was standing right beside this jeep here, and the police is up on the footpath here, and the gunman came out from behind this fence and fired across here. Very close range, and she was hit.
And of course, being a person who grew up in peacetime would not have anticipated that standing beside a police vehicle may have posed a danger.
Lyra's sister in Belfast received the call from police.
He said, "Oh, there was a disturbance tonight and your sister was injured." And I says, "Tell me this, is my sister still alive?" And he said, "I'm really sorry to have to tell you this, but your sister has passed away." And I just screamed and screamed and screamed and screamed and screamed and screamed.
Lira Mckee was only 29 when she was killed.
It's given me a big confidence boost. It's showing me what I can do.
That's when she won the journalism award.
She grew up in the peace era and advocated for LGBT rights. She wrote about a new Northern Ireland that could give people a better life. But it was the old ways of the Troubles that killed her. The new IRA is small but violent. It admitted to her murder. They were aiming at police.
Who are the new IRA?
They are the people who killed my sister. That's who they are. They're criminals who wear a mask of Irish republicanism to try and hide the fact that they're criminals. Because in some parts of Northern Ireland, even to this day, unfortunately, that sort of belief system gives them legitimacy and credibility within the community.
The gunman has not been caught, and no one from Craigan is saying who it is. Lira's family are campaigning for justice.
We want the gunman responsible for killing her, you know. But true justice for the people of Craigan and the people of Northern Ireland would be to get all of those people who are responsible in those criminal activities, to get them all off the streets so that everyone is safe going forward.
Throughout the centuries, the quest for justice in Ireland has been hard fought and rarely won. Now the vision of the future that Lira Mckee worked for lives on among other so-called peace babies. I met up with Anna Mckee and Carl Duncan in the old factory area of Londonderry. I wanted to know how they see the future, and we talked over a Guinness.
What worries me is seeing people our age who were born in the year of the Good Friday Agreement and afterwards. These are the people that are out rioting, and I think that's why we need opportunities, because these teenagers and children obviously don't see a future for themselves in the society that Northern Ireland is now.
If we're serious about tackling the root of paramilitarism in our society, if we're serious about tackling division, we need to take it head on and hit the root of it and uproot the growth of poverty.
But I do remain hopeful, because I do want to stay here. You know, this is where I see myself. But unless the opportunities build, then people like me, I mean, we're going to have no choice but to try and find somewhere else.
Tensions are rising. Last week, thousands marched against the sea border. Some in masks are suspected UVF paramilitaries. They see the border as another step, pushing them into a united Ireland. People are bracing for a long, violent summer.
Boris needs to sort it out. For me, it's a problem around what Boris does and how he sees us, and why we're still part of the UK, and whether we still are fully British citizens that we are now. But only time will tell.
Meanwhile, age-old discord and division sits unresolved.
We have a raging political conflict. We are more divided than ever, and that there's still deep hatred between both communities.
Well, I would certainly hope that these issues are ironed out. And I also hope that people become brave enough to have the conversations that they need, difficult ones, so that we can finally break free from the chains of the past and create a new, better Northern Ireland for everyone.